And Dallas Goldtooth with the Indigenous Environmental Network certainly was one of the Native American young leaders at Standing Rock, though not of the Standing Rock Reservation.
It looks like we're being moved. Hold on. Yeah, Amy, I'm so happy you're here. It's so beautiful to see the thousands upon thousands here, and I'm excited to be a part of the Indigenous Bloc. We're leading this march. You know, Indigenous peoples are on the forefront of climate change, both at the points of extraction and at the after effects, whether it's sea level rise, deforestation, or whatever it may be. It's our communities that are often facing the threat of survival, just a day-to-day survival. And so it's vital to have Indigenous voices present at any conversation about climate change. And I think it's essential for us when we talk about solutions and the step forward, or the way forward. It's Indigenous peoples, communities of color, forest-dependent communities, ocean-dependent communities who are going to set that path for us and give us some of those solutions.
You know, I'm just looking at some of your credentials here.
Oh, yeah.
And I see the People's Climate Movement, April 29th, 2017, all access. But I also see press, Indigenous Rising Media, Dallas Goldtooth, IEN Media Team. What's Indigenous Rising Media?
So Indigenous Rising Media is a project of the Indigenous Environmental Network, and it's an effort for us to get the content and stories of what's happening in our communities for everyone to see, but also to tell our stories from our perspective, you know what I mean? So that we don't let others tell the story for us. And that became absolutely essential in the fight against Dakota Access Pipeline, as a lot of people followed. Like, there wasn't mainstream media, you know. Amy, you were there, and before that, it was just, you know, the independent journalists, as us with our phones documenting what was happening through that entire process. And I really credit the exposure of that fight to all those people that just took it upon themselves to document what was happening, to tell the world, you know, what we were facing off with. And so Indigenous Rising Media was one of those groups that was there. We try to do our very best to just share what's happening as best as possible.
So we're hoping to speak later with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who started the first resistance camp at Standing Rock, opened her land to along the Cannonball River as a resistance camp, Sacred Stone. But right now, can you talk about what the latest is? One of Donald Trump's first acts in office, the executive order granting a permit for both Dakota Access Pipeline and to revive the Keystone XL. But on the Dakota Access Pipeline, the pipeline has been built under the Missouri River?
So the pipeline has been completed underneath the river, but to this point, oil has not flown in that pipeline. And we strongly credit that to all the organizing and activism that's happening across the country and across the world. The ongoing divestment campaign that has thus far divested over $1 billion out of money out of the investors for the Dakota Access Pipeline. So, you know, people are still standing strong. There's an ongoing lawsuit still in Iowa where landowners are still fighting against eminent domain right for their landowner rights against eminent domain.
Meaning that the pipeline.
Meaning that the pipeline, they're still trying to negotiate whether they're allowed to pass oil underneath landowners' land in Iowa. So the critique is that they can't do anything until that lawsuit is settled. So we still are waiting to see, you know, it's still a delay process. Meanwhile, Dakota Access is losing millions and millions of dollars every day because of just community activism and people standing up and just asserting their economic power as people.
Well, explain also the issue of economic power when you talk about divestment. Just in New York in the last few weeks, people were camped out in front of a Wells Fargo. Explain the national campaign.
Dakota Access, the fight, just ignited this passion that's been brewing for years now. And, you know, we're seeing a divestment campaign. Seattle divested over $1 billion. There's an ongoing divestment campaign in LA and San Francisco and New York. And I think that people are just realizing the connection of where they're putting their money and how does that contribute to not only the threat of life against Indigenous peoples, but the threat of life threatens all of our lives because of climate change. These banks are investing in fossil fuel industries that are creating a future that is unsustainable for all of our generations. And so we have to assert our rights. We have to step up and say we cannot invest in those things.
What are the banks you're targeting?
We're targeting Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America. There's I'm drawing a blank now. Wells Fargo. TD Bank. There you go. Yeah, thank you. See this?
We just had a big action.
Yes. And then the next step step for this is to really go to the heart of it and really call out Energy Transfer Partners, the parent company of Dakota Access Pipeline, who's not just trying to build one pipeline. They also have the Bayou Bridge Pipeline, which is going to be the next big fight down in Louisiana. You know, there's people rising up there. We have the Diamond Pipeline happening in Oklahoma. We have the Sable Trail Pipeline fight down in Florida. And so Standing Rock has inspired millions across this land, and that's what we need to do. We need to nationalize Standing Rock. We need to nationalize that fight and take it to the next level.
You're standing in front of the Capitol. What does that mean to you?
I think this is the place of power, supposedly. That's what they tell us. But in my experience, especially being on the ground, fighting against the state of North Dakota and fighting against DAPL security, I know where the power is. It's within us as the people. And it's absolutely essential for us to take to the streets to remind those in whatever seats they inhabit that the power is here, and you have to listen and be accountable to us as the people.
Dallas Goldtooth of Indigenous Environmental Network, thanks so much for being here. This is Democracy Now!, our live coverage of the People's Climate March.